Welcome to the Political Bridge. I am your host, Ada. Today we are tackling a massive legal and cultural battle, states versus Meta over youth social media addiction. Across the country, dozens of state attorneys general are suing tech giants. They claim companies like Meta intentionally design platforms to hook children, driving a spike in depression and anxiety. On one side, critics argue that government intervention is vital to protect minors from corporate harm. On the other side, defenders of free enterprise warn that state-level speech restrictions violate the First Amendment and create a patchwork of censorship. This clash touches every family with a smartphone in their home. Your child's mental health and your digital freedom hang in the balance. We have Nico representing the conservative view and Jordan representing the progressive view. Let us dive right into the heart of this high-stakes debate.
Every parent wants to protect their kids from online harm, but states suing tech companies sets a dangerous precedent for government overreach. When politicians start deciding what algorithms are safe, they step onto a slippery slope toward censorship. The First Amendment protects speech, even speech that critics find objectionable or annoying. If a state bans features like infinite scroll or push notifications for minors, where does the government stop? Pretty soon, adults will have to show ID just to read the news or share an opinion online. We are talking about the core of American liberty. Furthermore, trial lawyers and state bureaucrats are looking for a massive payday, not a real solution. Suing Meta does not teach a teenager how to handle a screen responsibly. Parents and families must retain authority over their own households, not state attorneys general who want to score political points. Heavy-handed regulation destroys the free market innovation that makes our economy strong. We need parental empowerment, not state censorship that erodes our fundamental constitutional rights.
Parents cannot fight a trillion-dollar corporation alone. Meta engineers spend billions of dollars using behavioral science to keep kids glued to their screens for hours every day. Your teenager stays up until 3 in the morning because the app is literally designed to trigger dopamine hits, leading to severe anxiety and depression. When we talk about youth social media addiction, we are looking at a public health emergency that demands immediate action. State lawsuits are the only tool we have left to hold these companies accountable for putting profit over children's safety. Tobacco companies face similar lawsuits when they marketed nicotine to minors. Tech companies are no different. They know their products harm developing minds, yet they refuse to change unless the courts force them to do so. Regulation is not about censorship. It is about consumer protection and basic safety standards for our kids. A nurse working a double shift cannot monitor every digital trap laid by Silicon Valley engineers. Government must step in.
Thank you both. Nico, you warn about government censorship and the erosion of constitutional rights. Jordan, you call this a public health crisis where parents are outmatched by corporate design. Let us test these arguments. Nico, how do you defend free speech when internal documents show companies deliberately maximize harm to kids? Jordan, how do you prevent state lawsuits from turning into a chaotic patchwork that destroys digital privacy for everyone? Nico, you are up first.
Internal memos and selective leaks do not give the government the right to tear up the Constitution. Every industry uses marketing to attract users, whether it is fast food, video games, or social media. If we let state attorneys general dictate how code is written, we hand unelected bureaucrats control over the entire internet. Jordan frames this as a public health emergency, but government mandates fail to solve human problems. When states pass age verification laws, adults lose their privacy because everyone must upload a driver license just to browse the web. That is a massive violation of the Fourth Amendment. Parents already possess tools like parental controls and device settings to manage screen time. We do not need the state acting as a nanny. Furthermore, youth social media addiction is a complex issue tied to school closures, lockdowns, and cultural shifts, not just an algorithm. Blaming Meta is an easy scapegoat for failed public policies that actually harmed our kids during recent years.
Blaming parents ignores the reality of modern technology. You cannot outparent an algorithm backed by artificial intelligence and billions of dollars in behavioral research. When Nico talks about age verification destroying privacy, he ignores the fact that tech companies already harvest more personal data on children than any government ever could. Meta tracks location, search history, and private messages to sell targeted ads. Protecting kids from youth social media addiction is not about censorship. It is about stopping corporate predators from exploiting developing brains for profit. Tobacco companies used the exact same free speech defense decades ago when states sued them for marketing to teenagers. The courts ruled that public safety outweighs corporate profit margins. States have every right to protect their citizens from dangerous products, and software that drives kids to self-harm is a dangerous product. We need court-ordered accountability, strict safety codes, and heavy penalties for companies that knowingly harm minors online every single day.
We have reached the stress test round. Nico, your defense of free speech ignores the legal precedent of product liability and consumer protection laws that apply to dangerous goods. Jordan, your push for state-level enforcement creates a fractured digital landscape where smaller platforms might collapse under legal costs while monopolies survive. Defend those specific blind spots right now. Nico, you go first.
Product liability applies to physical items that malfunction, like a faulty car brake or toxic food. Software code and speech are entirely different under constitutional law. If a book or a movie causes emotional distress, we do not sue the publisher for product liability because the First Amendment protects expressive content. Applying those rules to digital platforms opens the door to endless litigation against any media company whose content someone dislikes. Furthermore, state lawsuits do not protect children. They create a fragmented system where 50 different attorneys general enforce conflicting rules, making compliance impossible for anyone except giant tech monopolies. Smaller startups get crushed by legal fees, which actually protects Meta from competition rather than punishing them. Real protection comes from educating families and fostering market alternatives that prioritize privacy. Government lawsuits fail to fix the root cause of mental health struggles while trampling on the free speech rights of every single American citizen.
Treating software as pure speech ignores its real-world function as a behavioral trap. Algorithms are not poetry or political debate. They are functional mechanisms engineered to manipulate attention and drive ad revenue at the expense of human well-being. When a product harms consumers, the law provides a remedy, regardless of whether that product is made of plastic or computer code. The argument that state lawsuits help monopolies holds no water. We can establish federal standards while supporting state enforcement to ensure tech giants face consequences. Leaving corporations unregulated because compliance is difficult gives them a free pass to exploit our children. A warehouse worker or a nurse cannot afford private therapists to undo the damage caused by targeted dopamine loops. States are stepping up because Congress has failed to act. Accountability is long overdue, and these lawsuits represent the only viable path to force systemic reform and protect vulnerable minors from digital exploitation.
The lines are drawn. Nico insists that applying product liability to code destroys free speech and empowers monopolies. Jordan argues that algorithms are functional traps, requiring aggressive state intervention to protect children from exploitation. Neither side is backing down on the core conflict.
The debate over youth social media addiction ultimately comes down to who controls your life, you or the government. State lawsuits against Meta represent a dangerous expansion of bureaucratic power that threatens free expression and personal privacy. When we invite politicians to regulate algorithms, we sacrifice our constitutional freedoms for the false promise of safety. Parents, not state attorneys general, must guide their children through the digital age. Free markets and personal responsibility remain the best defense against corporate overreach. If we surrender our fundamental rights to government censors, we lose the very thing that makes America free. We must reject these misguided lawsuits and champion real solutions that empower families without destroying the open internet. Let us protect our kids by strengthening households, not by handing the keys of digital communication over to the state. Liberty requires vigilance, and that includes defending the right to build, share, and connect without government interference.
Corporate profits should never come before the mental health of our children. Meta designed these platforms to hook kids, and the human cost is staggering. Rates of depression and anxiety skyrocketed the moment smartphones became ubiquitous in teenage hands. State lawsuits are a crucial step toward forcing tech companies to prioritize safety over addiction. We are asking for basic accountability, transparent algorithms, and reasonable protections that keep kids safe from predatory design. Families are outmatched, and telling parents to handle a trillion-dollar machine on their own is a failure of public leadership. A nurse or a teacher should not have to fight Silicon Valley alone. We need collective action, strong legal enforcement, and a commitment to putting people above corporate revenue. Let us support these state lawsuits, protect our youth, and build a digital future that values human well-being over endless scrolling and ad clicks.
Let us look at the actual economic and global reality of what happens when individual states start policing digital architecture. If half a dozen states mandate specific design changes or age-gating mechanisms for platforms like Meta, we create an balkanized internet where compliance costs skyrocket. American technology companies are competing globally against international rivals in authoritarian nations like China, where state control is absolute. By hobbling our own domestic tech sector with a chaotic patchwork of state-level litigation and conflicting local mandates, we undermine American technological leadership on the world stage. Furthermore, the economic burden of these lawsuits does not hurt Meta as much as it stifles the next generation of American startups and innovators who cannot afford multi-state legal defenses. Real safety and innovation thrive in an open, competitive environment, not one shackled by bureaucrats. Parents and local communities have always adapted to new technologies throughout history, from television to video games, without requiring sweeping judicial overreach that damages our competitive edge and erodes our constitutional framework. We must resist the urge to let courtroom settlements replace sound economic policy and parental guidance.
Competitiveness on the global stage does not give any corporation a blank check to sacrifice the mental health of an entire generation of American children. Framing this as a simple matter of startup innovation completely ignores the documented internal findings showing that executives knew their products caused severe harm and actively chose to suppress those warnings. When global competitors operate without ethical boundaries, our response should never be to lower our own standards and allow our kids to be exploited for profit. European regulators have already demonstrated that strong, enforceable digital safety standards can coexist with a thriving tech ecosystem, proving that accountability does not destroy innovation. State attorneys general are stepping into a profound leadership vacuum left by federal inaction, utilizing the traditional tools of consumer protection to defend families who are entirely outmatched by multi-billion-dollar behavioral engineering teams. Protecting our youth from targeted addiction loops is a matter of national security and public health resilience. If we fail to hold these corporate giants accountable through every legal avenue available, we surrender our social fabric to algorithms designed solely to monetize human attention at the direct expense of our children's futures.
That is all the time we have for today's debate. Find The Political Bridge on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Join us next time for another engaging discussion. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep the debate alive.